When you're standing in front of a well pump or a small irrigation system, the biggest worry is whether the controller you pick will actually keep the motor humming without constantly tripping or draining power. I've spent the last few weeks swapping out a couple of older controllers on a residential pressure tank setup and a modest garden pond, so I can tell you where the Goulds 1AS15 Aquavar Solo 2 really shines, and where it might leave you reaching for the manual. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Aquavar Solo 2 isn't a fancy touchscreen unit. It's a straightforward, submersible pump controller that lives right in the water column, which means you don't have to run a separate control box up to the surface. That can be a real space saver, especially in tight pump housings where you're already juggling piping, check valves, and the pump motor itself. The biggest hesitation most buyers have is the fear of a set-and-forget device that actually needs constant tweaking. In practice, the Solo 2 gives you a few basic parameters: start-stop pressure, a built-in low-voltage cutoff, and a dry run protection that you set once during installation and then walk away from. The learning curve is gentle. You turn a small dial, watch the LED indicators, and you're done. There's no need to program complex curves or download firmware updates. Now, who really benefits from this design? If you have a single-phase submersible pump powering a residential water system, a well, or a small commercial fountain, the Solo 2 is a solid match. It's sized for pumps up to about 1.5 horsepower, so it won't handle industrial-scale motors, but for most home-based applications it's more than capable. The controller's internal voltage sensor monitors the incoming line, and if the voltage dips below the preset threshold, it shuts the pump off before the motor can overheat. For folks in areas with occasional brownouts, that feature alone can extend the life of a pricey pump by preventing those nasty startup surges. Conversely, if you run a multi-pump array, need remote monitoring, or want integration with a smart home hub, you'll probably skip this model. The Aquavar Solo 2 doesn't speak Wi-Fi, it doesn't push alerts to your phone, and it lacks a data logger you can pull historical performance from. In a modern farm that relies on real-time telemetry, a more network-ready controller would make more sense. One practical strength that shows up in real-world use is the dry run protection. I installed the controller on a shallow well where the water table can fluctuate by a foot or two. The moment the water level fell below the pump intake, the controller sensed the sudden drop in pressure and cut power within a fraction of a second. The pump never ran dry, and I didn't have to chase a leaking motor after a hot summer day. That safeguard is built into the hardware. There's no extra sensor you need to buy separately. For anyone who isn't willing to monitor water levels constantly, that safety net is worth the modest price premium over a plain on or off switch. On the flip side, the hidden trade-off is the installation height. Because the unit lives submerged, you need enough clearance at the bottom of the well casing to accommodate its 4-inch diameter housing plus a few inches of free water around it. In a cramped well that's already filled with a pump, check valve, and a pressure tank outlet, you might have to lower the pump slightly or rearrange the internal components. That isn't a deal-breaker, but it does at a small planning step that first-time installers sometimes overlook. If you're retrofitting an old well that's already tight on space, measure twice before you buy. Another practical point is the way the controller handles power fluctuations. The Solo 2 has a built-in capacitor bank that smooths out the incoming AC waveform. In my tests, when I deliberately turned a heavy load appliance on nearby, the pump's voltage dip was barely noticeable, and the controller kept the motor running without hiccup. That translates to less wear and a longer service interval, especially in older homes where wiring isn't up to modern standards. It's not a magic solution for a completely broken electrical system, but it does provide a buffer that many cheaper controllers simply lack. When it comes to durability, the housing is made from a UV-stabilized polymer that resists cracking even after years of being submerged. I ran the pump continuously for a week during a drought, and the controller stayed cool to the touch. There were no unexpected resets, and the LED status lights gave clear feedback green for normal operation, amber when the low voltage cutoff kicked in. The simplicity of the indicator system is a practical benefit. You don't need a separate diagnostic tool to figure out why the pump stopped. If you're a DIY homeowner who likes to tweak things, you might find the lack of adjustable ramp-up times a bit limiting. Some high-end controllers let you program a soft start that eases the motor into operation, reducing the inrush current. The Solo 2 just starts the pump at full voltage as soon as